Hi, I'm back. My sphere is drying, and I think that by the time I get my designs for my jack-o'-lantern, that I will be able to go ahead and carve it. It might be a little bit wet, but I'm going to be really careful about how I do that. Now, one of the things that I didn't talk to you about before that's super important is that when we make our jack-o'-lantern, we're going to have to put a lid on it. That's because we want to put a candle inside, and we can't put a candle inside if we don't have a lid to take off so the candle can go in there. So when we're deciding what kind of face we want, we have to make sure we plan for our lid. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my ideas. I'm going to use a marker, but I recommend that you use a pencil when you first start so you can erase if you need to. And it could be that I may have to just start over again because I'm not using a pencil. But if I use a pencil, you won't be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my pumpkin. And remember I told you we were going to talk about positive and negative space, and then I never really talked about it. Well, we're going to talk about it now. So we're going to call our jack-o'-lantern, the whole thing, we're going to call that the negative space or the background. So you can see I've just kind of drawn a sphere, which is a circle when it's two-dimensional. And I have to plan for my lid. So I'm going to draw a picture, I'm going to draw a line across the top. Now I don't want to have my facial features too far down on my jack-o'-lantern because I might not be able to see the candlelight if it's too far down here. So I want to keep everything in this area right here. So you can see I've drawn a line for my lid, and that's where I'm going to cut the top off. And I'll talk more about that when we actually do it. The other thing is that when you have a lid, you also have to have a hole, because what happens to hot air? What happens to air when you heat it up? It gets bigger, but it also moves up. So if you don't cut a hole in your lid, and I've kind of got a little bit of a drawing there, then there's nowhere for the heat to go except for into the lid, and when you try to lift it, it'll be too hot. But if you put a hole in it, then it won't be too hot. It'll be a little warm, but you should be okay. Of course, you've already blown the candle out because you don't want to put your fingers near flames. Now, I want my jack-o'-lantern to be a little bit creepy. So, because I kind of like Halloween and that kind of stuff, and he might even look a little angry. So I'm going to put flames on it. And remember how we talked about if I want eyeballs that I have to make a space for them where I don't cut the whole eyeball out. So you can see that I have sort of a little groove in there, and that's where I'm going to cut the eye, but right here I'm not going to cut all the way so that I still have that in there. And he's going to kind of have eyes that are kind of going up, and that kind of looks a little to me like maybe he's a little wicked. And he's cross-eyed, which I kind of like too. Now, I want to also put a mouth in there, and I'm not going to put a nose in mine because I don't want the I don't want the mouth to be too close to the bottom of it. And I'm also going to make him a little smirky. And I want him to have two front teeth. So there's my idea for my jack-o'-lantern. Now I recommend, I've done dozens of these over the years, but I recommend that you do 2 or 3 drawings of things you think you might want to do, okay? And that just helps you. And I think that this I like this flame. It needs to be a little bit better. So I'm going to just fix that. Now, remember also I said that we were going to color the things that are getting carved out. We're going to color those black. And we're going to color the parts that are going to stay orange. So in terms of negative and positive space, it's a little weird because our positive space is going to be what we carve away. Our negative space is going to be this background or the body of our jack-o'-lantern. So I'm going to color all of my positive space. What? That's right. I'm going to color it black because I'm going to cut out my positive space. So I'm going to color that black. I'm going to use a bigger marker, hopefully, yes. And this also helps me realize if I've made any mistakes, that if I color it, am I going to be missing anything? When I color these places that are going to be cut out, my positive space, I can see if I'm going to have a problem and if I'm going to lose anything because I wasn't careful about where, you know, where things were and whether or not I planned for that. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And I'm not going to forget to color in my hole because this hole at the top is probably one of the most important aspects of a successful jack-o'-lantern. So you can see now what it's going to look like, right? Now it'll probably be yellow because I'll have a, I will have a flame in there. How could I not have an orange? I don't have an orange. Maybe I do and I just don't see it. That happens. I may have to have a pink jack-o'-lantern. Is that a good idea? I could have a red one. I could have a yellow one. Can't believe I don't have an orange marker. Oh, there's one. Nope, that's a pen. Here we go. Orange. All right. So I'm going to make sure, oh, I need to make this line better because the other thing is that this lid is very important and we're going to have, there's going to be a part of this lid that you're going to have to do when you cut the lid off that is really important for the way this thing works in the future. So now I'm going to just color in. What is this? Is this the positive space or the negative space? It seems like it should be positive because it's still there, but it's not. It's the negative space. In our particular application, we are saying that the background is the negative space, and that's normally how it is with art. So it kind of keeps everything. If you've learned about positive and negative space, then you're not going to be too confused about why this is the negative space. It's the background. And when you carve out these facial features, the facial features, even though they're going to be sort of missing, they're going to be holes, they actually are what creates the whole thing of being a jack-o'-lantern. So they're naturally going to be the object of our drawing, and they are going to be the positive space. Now notice that this tooth, I'm not going to be cutting that tooth out because I made sure that I didn't cut the whole mouth out and that I had the teeth attached to the rest of my jack-o'-lantern, to my negative space. So that's super important. And the same thing goes for the eyeballs, that I did that as well. And it seems like I just keep talking about it over and over and over again, but it's really important. It really is. If you make that mistake and you really, really, really wanted to have teeth, you won't have teeth. I mean, I guess it's okay to just have a mouth with no teeth, but it is a jack-o'-lantern, and we kind of like to have them have teeth and maybe even eyeballs like this one does. So when I take the lid off, I want to make sure that I have enough room for the candle to fit in there. So when we go ahead and cut our jack-o'-lantern lid, we're going to kind of clean out the middle a little bit just so that it's there's enough room for a tea light. And also you have to remember that with clay, it's going to shrink. It'll be about 5% smaller than what it is right now. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you make this. You don't want it to be so small, and you don't want your lid to be so small that you can't get the candle in. All these things you have to think about in advance, but that is the way of art. All of art is like that. You have to think about things in advance, or you've made a mistake and now you have to do it again. So there's my idea for my jack-o'-lantern. Okay. So remember I told you that I was going to make this jack-o'-lantern and I was only going to have plasticware for tools? Well, I was able to make my sphere that way, but I wasn't able to do it with the lid, because cutting the lid is a different thing. And so with cutting the lid, I have gotten myself a cutting wire, but you can also have this monofilament. It's just fishing line, and this will work just as well. What you might want to do is make handles out of using paper clips, and that might help you when you go to use this as a cutting wire, but you're going to have to wrap it around your fingers just so that it doesn't slide through. Okay, so I'm going to use this cutting wire, or now it's fishing line, to cut my lid. Now, one of the things that's super important is that if you just cut it straight across, then when you go to put your lid on and off, you won't always know the best way for it to go on. And sometimes they'll slide around on the top, and you kind of want it to sit still and steady and sturdy. So when you do that, you're going to cut grooves into your lid. Now, I'm not going to use this. I can, and it'll work just as well, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, and this is, you can see this a lot better. Notice that I have my lid up high, okay? I don't have it way down here. I have it up high, and I'm going to pull it. Notice I've got my thumbs back here. I'm going to push with my thumbs and pull with my fingers and pull that back. Now, when I get back here, I want to cut a groove. And I think this is going to be the front because I've got a little more room on the front now. All right, so can you see how I've cut that groove? It's almost like a little helmet. Now I'm always going to know where my lid goes, how it fits, and also it won't slide off. All right, now I've done that. So my clay is still a little wet. Hopefully you have waited until yours is a little drier than mine. So mine is going to be a little bit hard to get off because it's still sticky, but I've gotten my lid off. Okay, and you can see that on the inside here, there's not a lot of room for a tea light. So I'm going to take my plasticware knife and I'm just going to cut that out. I don't need any of that anyway. I'm going to take all that out. See, there's a bigger hole now. And I'm just going to clean out some of that. I'm not being super careful because we're not really going to see the inside of this anyway. So it's okay. And I'm going to take some of that out. And now I have a carved out inside. I've got a big space for my ideas. And I have my lid. And into my lid, I have cut grooves, so I always know where it is. Now, I'm not going to put this back on because it's just going to stick. But when I go to dry it, I can put a piece of paper towel between the lid and the rest of my jack-o'-lantern, and then it won't stick anymore, and it won't be a problem. I do have to cut a hole in my lid. And I'm going to need my glasses for this because I can't see close up. Okay, So what I'm going to do is, before I do anything, I'm just going to draw what I want that hole to look like. Now I want it to be big enough for my finger to fit in. And I'm going to just do a regular old circle. You can do a star, you can do a heart, but you know, since my guy's kind of wicked, I don't want to do a heart. That doesn't really make sense. And I have to cut all the way through. Now, if you have regular pottery tools, this will be a little bit easier for you. But because I'm just using this fork tine that I pulled off my fork, it's a little bit challenging. However, it is not impossible, and is perfectly doable. Now, this is not super clean. You can kind of see it's a little squabbly on the outside. And so I'm going to have to work on that because I want all of my pottery to be nice and smooth and clean. I want the hole on the inside to be as big as it is on the outside. So here's the hole on the outside. Here's the hole on the inside, about the same size, okay? And then I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to smooth, and I'm going to smooth on the inside of my hole so that when I look at it, it's all nice and smooth and clean and nice looking. And I'm going to show you the difference between where I smoothed it out and where I didn't. And you can really see the difference, right? It doesn't look so great over there, but over here, it looks pretty good. All right. My extra clay, I'm going to save because I can make stuff out of that. And I know how to attach clay, so if I want to attach it to my jack-o'-lantern, I can. Now, what we're doing is called subtractive sculpture because we're taking things away from the sculpture, right? And so if I were to add something like ears, let's say, then that would be additive. Now I've got my jack-o'-lantern face here, and before I try to go ahead and carve it, I want to make sure that it looks the way I want it to do. And I have my drawing right here. So I can reference that. I can look at that and say, oh, that's right. That's how I drew that. So I'm going to just go ahead and lightly, before I try and do anything, lightly make my jack-o'-lantern face. Now, it might not be as easy to draw on the clay as it is on your paper. So it might look a little different. But that's okay. You know, what we're doing here is we are making a really cool jack-o'-lantern, but we're also, you know what? I'm going to show you because I made a mistake. Do you see how close that eye is to the other one? I think it's a little too close and there's not enough clay between them. I'm just going to move it over. I'm going to just smooth it out and just move it over. And that's why you don't want to try and carve it until you know that it's supposed to be good. If you're doing this with your teacher or with a parent, you might have them check what you've done to make sure that it's going to work. That always helps. And I'm going to do my sort of flaming eyes. And now you can see that even though I have a big space for my mouth, I don't really have that much room for a mouth. And I don't want it to go down too low. So I'm going to do a smaller mouth and I'm not going to have any teeth. And I have just adjusted my idea to fit what I'm doing. There it is. Yeah. And I think I need to fix this eye again. I still think I have a little bit of problem with it. So I'm going to just make it a little bit more like an eye and less like a fish. There we go. Yeah. So there's my two eyes. Now when I cut it out, it's going to look different. When I'm cutting this out, the fork tine probably isn't going to work very well. Normally we would have a pin tool, but I don't have one of those here, but I do have a paper clip, if you can see that against my black shirt. So I'm going to use my paper clip to make these cuts, and that's perfectly good tool. I want to go all the way through the clay, and I'm just going to follow those lines that I've drawn on there. Now I want to be really careful because I don't want to make any mistakes. Once I make a mistake, it's not really, very good for, very easy to change it. Now my clay is a little bit wet just because I'm trying to show you what to do. And so your clay might not be as easy to fix mistakes as it was for me. If that's the case, then you kind of have to live with what you have done on your jack-o'-lantern. But usually that's okay. The other thing is that it's going to be a little bit easier for you to cut out your facial features than it is for me, just because my clay is so wet that it sticks and I can't get the clay out of the holes. I guess I'm just going to have to work on that. When you're doing yours, hopefully your clay will have dried a little bit longer and it won't be so much of a problem. It's not a huge problem. It's nothing I can't handle. Some of it I'm going to push right through. Wait till you see though, because I bet you're like, oh no, she's made a huge mistake. And I may have. Maybe I should have waited a little bit longer. But I wanted to hurry up and get this onto YouTube for Halloween. And I don't always have a lot of time to make videos. All right. Almost done. I'll push that through, I think. It's just going right through that clay. When yours is dried a little bit better than mine, it won't do this. Okay. There we go. Nice. Nice. All right. The other thing is, as you can see, sometimes it will sort of collapse a little bit if it's too wet. So you're getting to see why you want to wait until it's a little bit drier than this. I'm going to only do one eye while you're watching, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's all carved. All right. Smooth that out a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Now I still have a little bit of work to do here, but this is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks, especially since I rushed it a little bit. You really don't want to rush clay. It's just never a good idea. And I've done it anyway, so good thing I've done this before. It might have not turned out well at all. I'll just scoop that out. All right. There you go, one eye. All right, I'll be back in just a few minutes with, well, I'll be back instantaneously with it all done. Okay, I'm back. And I have my jack-o'-lantern all carved. And he looks a little like maybe I should have waited, but I think he still is going to look kind of cute. Imagine him with all of the inside glowing with candlelight. Now, I've smoothed out the edges and I've gotten my lid on, but because this is a little bit wet, I am going to take one of these pieces of paper towel and put it between there. What happens is if it's too wet, or if you used water to smooth it out, that the clay will stick, and then when you go to fire it, it won't come back off. So we're just going to put this in here, tuck that down, and we have our jack-o'-lantern. And now he's just going to wait with this lid on because we want it to dry all together so that the lid fits. He's just going to wait until he's dry, and then we're going to fire him, then we're going to glaze him, and then we're going to fire him again.